Is Ukraine looking to advance in the west, but still push near Bakhmut? And are Russian commanders increasingly faced with a dire choice between wasting their troops and getting on the Kremlin's bad side? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's October 4th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, taking a look at the control map, There's actually been no updates yesterday, right? The last update we had had some level of Ukrainian advances taking place near Robtina, and it appears like some of this is starting to continue. Looking over at the combat map, you can see as of 3 hours ago, Ukrainian Defense Forces reporting some level of success outside Kopani. This is a small village adjacent to Robtina, where it looks like Ukrainian forces may be attempting to expand their bridgehead instead of going deep, trying to go wide. You also have Ukrainian forces reporting some advances in the Andriivka-Klishchiivka area. Looks like probably small advances securing more of this rail line that Russia is using as a sort of natural trench line. And of course, Russia counterattacking across 43 different combat engagements, which is possibly representing a ramping up of Russian combat operations. But it may simply be the ebb and flow of Russia's combat patterns, right? We noticed that during their offensive phase, they would often do an advance and then spend about 24 to 48 hours consolidating and refitting before attacking again. You can see here, you've got some attacks, counterattacks near Klishchiivka, a lot outside Donetsk city, and then no reported attacks in Zaporizhzhia, but we can be confident that that is really happening. Excuse me, guys. Also, if you've been living under a rock, you may not have noticed that I have launched Strike Gum. Strike Gum is basically an energy drink in a piece of gum with 90 milligrams of caffeine in each piece and a refreshing mint flavor. It's a better alternative to energy drinks in every way. Instead of the 200 calories and 40 grams of sugar in an energy drink, Strike Gum has like 5 calories and 0 sugar. So if you're interested, you can go to strikegum.com. Best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run are going to Ukrainian charities that help civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. So you can get an affordable alternative and better tasting and healthier alternative to energy drinks and support Ukraine. So check us out, strikegum.com. The other news that is worth talking about is a lot of the Twitterverse, so to speak, has been talking about Kopani, and it sounds like Ukraine has been really making some moves pushing into this region. You can see, again, Kopani here, Robtina here, a large open field between it, and some analysts like this account, Tesla Facts, so take it with a grain of salt, reports that this area might be heavily mined, and while it is hard for both Russia and Ukraine to use this, to cross this area, it's as much of a defensive barrier for Ukraine as it is for Russia. Now, I'm not convinced that Russian forces have mined this area significantly, because again, you have to think when they were deploying their mining operations, they were focused heavily on this region here, the line of contact. Now, it seems unlikely that there's going to be minefields placed exactly where Ukraine's advance went down. So I think it may not be quite as prohibitively mined as they may suspect. Also, Ukraine may have all the data it needs to make it into Kopani simply because they've watched Russian forces attack for several weeks now from this Kopani direction. You can see it here. And when you have that, you're going to be able to observe what routes the enemy uses, and it's going to give Ukraine a perspective on what it is that where they can cross into Kopani. All right, you can see again, this looks like a pro-Russian post, and it's just discussing the fact that, again, it seems like Ukrainian armed forces pivoting towards Kopani. They want to, this count is arguing that Ukraine just wants to get some wins under its belt before it sort of pauses its counteroffensive. I think that's highly possible. You can see, again, they never really have been able to achieve the major breakthroughs that they were hoping for. But now that it's October, we're seeing, again, the weather is going to play a part and slow the fighting. Now, here's where things get more interesting. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu oftentimes celebrates, those, or calls out favorably those military formations that are doing good work in the war, usually leading the defensive effort. Recently, it's been those formations that are conducting defensive operations in and around Robtina. And what was strange is that he called out, elements of the 70th Russian Guards, the 56th Air Assault, the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, and the 291st, a sort of weird menagerie, and ignored some of the more favored formations, such as the 108th VDV or the 274th VDV. And ISW's theory is that it could just be that you're trying to spread the love a little bit and acknowledge the efforts of some of these other formations. But they also think it's possible that Shoigu is celebrating those formations whose commanders have followed the Kremlin's instructions, namely that the Kremlin is ordering Russian commanders to, quote, waste their troops in counterattacks to hold low-value tactical positions. That these commanders would probably prefer to stand up to the Kremlin and move to previously prepared positions, but that this would literally risk their careers. There is definitely some evidence for this, One Russian frontline commander indicated that the Russian VDV forces, Colonel General Teplinsky, had actually done this. They rotated a VDV formation away from the front lines to refit them instead of resuming counterattacks in Bakhmut, and Shoigu reportedly was pretty angry about it. All in all, it seems like Russian commanders may be feeling the heat, and Russia may be absolutely fixated on the political objectives of ensuring that the map continues to look very favorable to Russia. And that means they cannot allow Ukraine to gain even an inch of territory, even if it's at a cost of a tremendous number of lives and equipment. The question is, will this attrition as an objective, will Russia eventually break under this level of attrition? It's hard to say, We've been talking about these stories, it feels like, for the entirety of the war, and we've said, Russian forces can't possibly sustain this level of grindy attritional fighting, and they do. They just keep sustaining it, if there's one thing history has taught us, it's never underestimate the ability of Russians to suffer pointlessly. Anyway, the last big story is that the Pentagon is warning Congress that it is actually running low on funds to replace weapons that were sent to Ukraine. This is interesting because my understanding was that this was part of old stock being sent that was earmarked for retirement anyway, but it sounds like maybe they actually just pushed up the timelines for some of this old equipment, equipment that was earmarked is getting sent over, and that the Pentagon is actually being slow to backfill. This is not the sort of calls you want to make. You don't want to end up with a military that doesn't have the resources to fight and win its own wars while bankrolling someone else's. Pentagon comptroller, and we know that the U.S. Congress has been very, very delayed in getting funding for Ukraine and funding for the entire government. So it's really a tough spot for the Pentagon to be in when they're beholden to the political wrangling of Congress. Anyway, guys, that's all I had for you. Thanks so much to our Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News. Thanks so much to our Lieutenant tier members. And thanks to all the members of Combat Vet News who support me. Again, we haven't seen any of my videos claimed by these hackers. I know for a fact some other YouTube content creators in the Ukraine war space have been targeted by the same account. We're still working on trying to get YouTube to do something about it. But I'm trying to sort of convince them that they should go public with these issues. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.